Your mom found herself a new daddy who makes more money than me. Jack slurred, sitting in his dimly lit kitchen, pouring his heart out to his cat. The bottle of whiskey on the counter was half empty, matching his current state of mind. He had recently discovered that Sarah, the love of his life, had been having an affair for about 6 months. But what twisted the knife deeper wasn't just the betrayal, it was who she chose. Not a stranger, not some random guy from her workplace. No, Sarah had chosen to break their marriage vows with Mike, Jack's best friend, the same Mike who'd been by his side for more than half his life. The pain was unbearable, a double-edged sword that cut deeper with each passing day. You know what hurts the most, buddy. Jack scratched behind the cat's ears, his voice cracking. They probably laughed at me. All those business trips, all those late meetings. God, I was so blind. Jack and Mike's friendship had been the stuff of legends in their hometown of Boston. Since their senior year of high school, they'd been inseparable. They enlisted in the army together, serving side by side, their bond growing stronger through each deployment, each hardship. When they finally returned home, they had a dream to build something of their own. Remember when we started, Mike? Jack whispered to himself, lost in memories. Just two kids with big dreams and empty pockets. Their partnership had been perfect. Mike had the gift of gab. He could sell ice to an Eskimo, as the saying went. Jack, on the other hand, was the visionary. He could spot business opportunities where others saw nothing but empty lots and failed ventures. Together, they were unstoppable. Mr. Harrison, Mike had said during their first big pitch, imagine transforming this abandoned warehouse district into Boston's most vibrant tech hub. Jack here has run all the numbers, mapped out every detail. And you're the smooth talker who'll make it happen, right? Mr. Harrison had replied with a knowing smile. That was how they built Harrison Tech Plaza, their first major success. One deal led to another, and within a decade, they had built Empire Ventures into a powerhouse that dominated the East Coast real estate market. It was at the height of their success that Jack met Sarah. She walked into their office one day, representing a potential investor, and his world stopped spinning. She was everything he'd ever dreamed of, brilliant, beautiful, and seemingly just as captivated by him as he was by her. The moment I saw you, Jack had told her on their first date at the prestigious top of the Hub restaurant, I knew my life would never be the same. Sarah had blushed, tucking a strand of her auburn hair behind her ear. Is that your standard line, Mr. Successful Businessman? I've never meant anything more in my life, he replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. Their whirlwind romance had been the talk of Boston's elite social circles. Jack spared no expense in showing Sarah the world, Paris, Rome, Tokyo. In a suite overlooking the Mediterranean in Monaco, he finally got down on one knee. Sarah Elizabeth Peterson, he'd said, his hands trembling as he opened the Tiffany box. You've made my life complete. Will you marry me? Her eyes had filled with tears as she nodded, unable to speak. Later that night, his first call had been to Mike. Little did Jack know that call would mark the beginning of the end. As he sat in his kitchen now, talking to Sarah's cat, soon to be Mike's cat, he supposed, he couldn't help but wonder where it all went wrong. You were there, he told the cat, his words slightly slurred. You saw how perfect we were. How did it all fall apart? When did I become the fool in their little game? The first signs of trouble appeared about 2 years into their marriage. While their home life seemed picture perfect, Jack's business intuition, once razor sharp, began to dull. Deals that should have been slam dunks mysteriously fell through. The office atmosphere shifted from energetic to tense, and Jack couldn't put his finger on why. I don't understand, Jack had confided in Sarah one evening, pacing their luxury penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor. The Thompson deal was practically signed. Then suddenly, they pull out without explanation. Sarah had wrapped her arms around him, her perfume, Chanel No. 5, his last anniversary gift to her, filling his senses. Maybe you're just trying too hard, honey. Sometimes things fall apart so better things can come together. If only he'd noticed how her eyes didn't quite meet his when she said those words. But the real knife in his back was the growing distance between him and Mike. Their legendary friendship, once the talk of Boston's business circle, had cooled to barely cordial professionalism. Mike started dropping names Jack didn't recognize, mentioning meetings he hadn't been invited to. "Hey, Mike," Jack had called out one day, catching his friend in the office corridor. "Got time for a drink? Like old times." Mike had checked his Rolex, a gift from Jack for their company's 10th anniversary. "Sorry, buddy. Got a dinner meeting with the Singapore investors. Rain check." "Sure, sure," Jack had replied, trying to ignore the fact that he hadn't heard about any Singapore investors. "Maybe next week?" But next week never came. There was always another meeting, another deal, another excuse. "Remember Afghanistan?" Jack had tried again, a month later, cornering Mike in the parking garage. "That night in Kandahar when we promised we'd always have each other's backs." Mike had shifted uncomfortably, not meeting Jack's eyes. "That was a long time ago, Jack. We were different people then." "Were we? Or are we different people now?" The conversation had ended there, with Mike's hasty departure and another vague promise to catch up soon. Then came that fateful afternoon when Jack spotted Sarah's Mercedes parked outside the Beacon Hill bistro. His heart had skipped a beat. She was supposed to be shopping with friends at Newbury Street. "Where are you, honey?" he'd asked, his phone pressed to his ear, trying to keep his voice casual. Sarah's response had been smooth, practiced. "At the Prudential Center with Jessica and Kate. We're having a girls' day. Don't wait it up, darling. We might go for drinks after." "Having fun. The best. Oh, Kate just found this gorgeous Versace dress. I should go help her decide. Love you." The line went dead before he could respond. Jack sat in his car, staring at the bistro's entrance, his world tilting on its axis. He knew he should drive away, preserve the illusion of his perfect life for just a little longer. But his feet carried him toward the restaurant's door, his heart pounding with each step. Through the window, he saw them. Sarah and Mike, their heads close together, fingers intertwined across the white tablecloth. Her face held that same radiant smile she used to reserve for Jack. Mike was saying something that made her laugh, her head throwing back in that carefree way that had first made Jack fall in love with her. "Sir, would you like a table?" The hostess's voice snapped him back to reality. Jack backed away, nearly stumbling over his own feet. "No, no, thank you. I remembered I have somewhere else to be." He drove home in a daze, the city lights blurring through his tears. The bottle of 25-year-old Macallan that Sarah had given him for Christmas seemed like the only friend he had left. Well, that and the cat, who watched him with judgmental yellow eyes as he poured his third, or was it fourth, glass. That night, Jack tried to act normal when Sarah came home, her designer perfume mixed with a scent he refused to recognize. He pretended to be asleep, listening to her quiet movements in their marble bathroom, each sound another crack in his breaking heart. "You're home early," she whispered, slipping into bed beside him. "Couldn't sleep without you," he lied, his voice steady despite the bourbon burning in his throat. "Always my sweet romantic," she murmured, and the genuine affection in her voice made everything so much worse. The next morning, over breakfast, Jack watched her prepare her morning coffee, 2 sugars, a splash of cream, just as she had done every morning for the past 3 years. Her diamond wedding ring caught the morning light, sending prismatic reflections dancing across her designer kitchen. "Sarah," he started, then faltered. Are you happy?" She looked up from her phone, surprise flickering across her perfect features. "Of course I am, darling. Why wouldn't I be? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like we're drifting apart." Sarah put down her phone and reached across their imported Italian marble countertop to squeeze his hand. "Don't be silly. We're perfect together. You're everything I've ever wanted." Asterisk everything except faithful asterisk, he thought bitterly, but forced a smile. "I love you," he said instead. "I love you too, baby. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm meeting the girls for dinner tonight. Don't wait up." Jack's stomach churned. "The girls? Which girls?" "Oh, you know, Jessica, Kate, the usual crowd." She wouldn't meet his eyes, suddenly very interested in her manicure. We're trying that new place in Back Bay. Later that day, Mike walked into Jack's office without knocking, a habit from their closer days. Got to head out early today, partner. Family emergency. Jack looked up from his computer screen, studying his friend's face. The face he'd known for 20 years, the face he trusted with his life in combat, the face that now belonged to a stranger. Family emergency. Anything I can help with? Mike shifted uncomfortably. Nah, just, you know how it is. My sister's having some trouble. Your sister who lives in California. The one who just posted vacation photos from Hawaii this morning. A flash of panic crossed Mike's face before he recovered. Different sister. You only have one sister, Mike. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, 20 years of friendship creaking under its weight. What's really going on? Jack finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what you're talking about, Mike replied, but his hand trembled as he adjusted his tie, the blue Hermes tie Jack had given him for Christmas. Don't insult my intelligence. Not after everything we've been through. Mike's face hardened. You want to do this now? Fine. Let's do this. You've been checking out for months, Jack. The company's suffering. Deals are falling through. Someone has to pick up the slack. Jack stood up slowly, his hands flat on his desk. Is that what you tell yourself? That you're just picking up the slack? Is that what you tell yourself when you're with my wife, too? The color drained from Mike's face. Jack, save it. Jack's voice was ice. I saw you both at Beacon Hill Bistro and at the Four Seasons. How long, Mike? How long have you been sleeping with my wife? It's not what you think. The end of the AT to the SIT. Jack's fist came down on the desk, sending his world's best husband mug, last year's Christmas gift from Sarah, crashing to the floor. Tell me, brother, what exactly is it when my best friend and my wife are sneaking around behind my back? The sound of shattering ceramics seemed to hang in the air between them. Mike took a step back, his facade cracking. She wasn't happy, Jack. You were never there. I'd give it a SBUILPINGAN Empire, FRRHER. Jack roared. Everything I did, every deal I made, every late night at the office, it was all for her. For us. No, Mike's voice was quiet but firm. It was all for you. It's always been about you, Jack. Your dreams, your ambitions, your empire. Sarah was just another trophy in your collection. The words hit Jack like physical blows. He sank back into his chair, suddenly exhausted. Get out, he whispered. Just get out. Mike hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I never meant for this to happen. Nothing you say is worth anything anymore, Jack replied, not looking up. Nothing at all. That evening, Jack sat in his Aston Martin outside the Four Seasons, watching the valet parking area. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. He didn't have to wait long. Sarah's Mercedes pulled up at exactly 7:30 p.m. Going to meet the girls, honey? He muttered to himself, taking a long pull from his flask. At least you're consistent with your lies. 20 minutes later, Mike's Range Rover appeared. Jack watched his former best friend hand the keys to the valet, straightening his jacket, the same jacket they'd picked out together at Brooks Brothers last Christmas. His phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, having a great time with the girls. Don't wait up. Something snapped inside him. Before he knew what he was doing, Jack was out of his car and walking toward the hotel entrance. The doorman recognized him. He and Sarah had spent their wedding night in the presidential suite. Good evening, Mr. Bennett. Lovely to see you again, sir. Jack nodded mechanically, his feet carrying him to the hotel bar. He needed to see it with his own eyes, needed to make it real. They were there, of course. Sarah and Mike, tucked away in a corner booth, their heads close together. Her hand was on his arm, and he was looking at her the way Jack used to look at her. Can I get you something, sir? The bartender asked. Death's door gin? Double, Jack replied, his eyes never leaving the couple. Actually, make it a bottle. He watched them for an hour, each whispered laugh, each intimate touch another nail in the coffin of his marriage. Finally, he saw them stand up, Mike's hand on the small of Sarah's back, the same spot where Jack's hand used to rest. They walked past him, so engrossed in each other they didn't even notice him sitting there. He followed them to the elevator, staying just far enough behind. Wait, he called out just as the doors were closing. Sarah's face went white when she saw him. Mike took a protective step in front of her, a gesture that made Jack want to laugh and vomit simultaneously. Jack, Sarah whispered, this isn't. We were just. Just what, Sarah? Having a business meeting? Discussing quarterly reports. Please enlighten me about what you and my best friend are doing in a hotel at 9 p.m. on a Thursday. The elevator doors closed behind him with a soft ding that seemed obscenely cheerful. Jack, buddy, let's talk about this rationally, Mike started. Rationally? Jack's laugh was hollow. You want rational? Okay, let's be rational. Let's discuss how my wife and my best friend have been meeting behind my back. Let's analyze the logistics of how long this has been going on. 6 months? A year? Since the wedding? It's not like that. Sarah stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. We never meant to hurt you. Then what did you mean to do? His voice echoed in the small space. Was it fun? Did you both laugh about stupid, trusting Jack? Poor Jack, so busy building an empire, he didn't notice his wife and best friend stabbing him in the back. You were never there, Sarah suddenly shouted back. Do you know how many dinners I ate alone? How many nights I went to bed alone? Mike was there. He listened. He cared. I was building it for you. Jack's fist hit the elevator wall. Every deal, every late night, every business trip, it was all to give you the life you deserved. I never wanted the empire, Jack. Sarah's voice was quiet now. I just wanted you. Well, congratulations. Jack's voice was ice. Now you have neither. The elevator doors opened on the penthouse floor. Jack stepped out, then turned back to face them. You know what's funny? I actually came here tonight thinking I could save our marriage. That if I confronted you both, there would be tears and apologies, and we could somehow fix this. He shook his head. But looking at you now, I realize there's nothing left to save. Jack, please. Sarah reached for him, but he stepped back. I want you out of the house by tomorrow, he said flatly. Take whatever you want. I don't care anymore. He looked at Mike. And you, the lawyers will be in touch about the company. Come on, man. Don't throw away everything we've built. Mike pleaded. I'm not throwing it away. Jack's smile was terrible. You did that the first time you touched my wife. The next few months passed in a blur of bourbon and broken dreams. Jack watched from the sidelines as his life crumbled piece by piece. Empire Ventures, the company he had built from nothing, slipped through his fingers like sand. Mike, ever the smooth talker, had been preparing for this moment, quietly turning board members against Jack, painting him as unstable and unreliable. Mr. Bennett, his secretary Linda approached him one morning, tears in her eyes. The board, they're calling an emergency meeting. Jack looked up from his untouched coffee, his once sharp suits now wrinkled, his eyes hollow. Let me guess, Mike called it. She nodded sadly. I'm so sorry. The boardroom, once his throne room, now felt like an execution chamber. Mike sat at the head of the table, Jack's seat, with a sympathetic expression that made Jack's stomach turn. Given recent events and concerns about leadership stability, the chairman was saying, the board has voted to restructure the executive team. Just say it. Jack interrupted, his voice rough. You're pushing me out. Jack, Mike leaned forward. This isn't personal. Like sleeping with my wife wasn't personal. The words hung in the air like poison. Later that night, alone in his empty penthouse, Jack found himself talking to Sarah's cat, the only living thing that still shared his space. You know what's funny, buddy? He poured another drink, the bottle nearly empty. I always thought betrayal would feel like a gunshot. Quick, clean, decisive. But this is more like drowning. Slow, suffocating, watching the surface get further and further away. His phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. I'm coming by tomorrow to get Winston. Mike's place has a beautiful garden for you. Jack stared at the cat, who looked back with unblinking yellow eyes. Even you're leaving me for him, huh? He stumbled to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over the Boston skyline, the empire he'd built, now lost. In his reflection, he barely recognized himself. The next morning, fighting a hangover, he opened his door to find Sarah standing there, looking more beautiful than ever in designer clothes he hadn't bought her. Jack, she started, then stopped, taking in his appearance. Oh, Jack, what have you done to yourself? What have I done? He laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from you. It didn't have to be like this, she said softly. If I just what? Worked less, been home more. Tell me, Sarah, at what point in building our perfect life did I lose you? She looked away, tears in her eyes. You never had me, Jack. Not really. You had the idea of me, the trophy wife for your perfect life. But you never saw me. And Mike sees you. The words tasted like acid. He sees me as a person, not an achievement. She moved past him to pick up Winston. We're happy, Jack. We're getting married next month. The world tilted sideways. Married. It's been 3 months. When you know. She paused at the door. You taught me that. After she left, Jack sat in his kitchen, surrounded by empty bottles and memories. His phone buzzed again. Mike. The lawyers finalized everything. The company's yours now. Congratulations on winning. Jack threw his phone against the wall, watching it shatter like his life had. 3 months later, he saw them in the Sunday paper. Boston's power couple ties D8 eating and nut, the headline screamed. Sarah and White, Mike in a tuxedo, both beaming at each other like teenagers in love. The article praised Mike's business acumen, mentioning how he'd saved Empire Ventures from mismanagement. It mentioned Sarah's charity work, her plans to open an art gallery. They were the perfect couple, living Jack's perfect life. That night, sitting in his new apartment, a far cry from his penthouse, Jack finally understood. He'd spent his life building an empire of glass, so focused on the reflection it cast that he never saw the cracks forming beneath the surface. Here's to you. He raised his glass to Winston's empty cat bed. To the perfect life. May they choke on it. But even as he said it, something inside him shifted. Maybe it was time to stop drowning. Maybe it was time to swim. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he'd been avoiding. Hello, this is Alcoholics Anonymous. How can we help? Asterisk, the end asterisk. What do you think? Who was right in this story and who was wrong? How should Jack have handled things differently to keep both his wife and his business? Share your thoughts in the comments below.